the big dog that didn't bark, Iran oil sanctions. Everyone's been looking forward to this big date on July 1st. We're going to go to Keith Johnson in our Washington bureau. Keith, what happens on July 1st with Iran and with the embargo?
Well, July 1st is actually the European Union's embargo, which is at this point almost a formality because they've spent a few months winding down the purchases of Iranian oil. Iran's had to try to find some other sellers. But July 1st was sort of the culmination. We also had, as of June 28th, the official U.S. sanctions going on. So this is the week when about 6 months of work by the Western Europeans, the U.S., really comes to a culmination in terms of putting the pressure on Iran. What's interesting is that the context now is totally different than it was when these decisions were made. And that's what makes this whole situation a little bit more, it gives more flexibility to the U.S. and Western Europe than it looked like we had in January.
Right. It looked like at one point that oil prices would be even higher than they were ahead of the Arab Spring, and we've seen all this turmoil
right.
for the last 18 months in oil markets. Is there still any fear about a rogue general in Iran? You've done stories about the Straits of Hormuz and all
right.
the risk here. Could there be any kind of explosion as a result of these sanctions?
No, I mean, there's always the wild card in terms of how they would respond. But on the other hand, there's been a few months coming that the Europeans have been winding down purchases. The U.S. has very carefully telegraphed what it was going to be doing. And another interesting point, one of the countries that's not actually really buying into the sanctions, which isn't being terribly helpful on all of this, is China. They've continued to buy Iranian oil. But China has been very eloquent, now that they get more than half their oil from the region, about telling the Iranians not to even think about closing the Straits of Hormuz. And that was a message that the Iranians listened to. So while there's always a possibility for wild card or operations by other states in the region that try to take aim at Iran's nuclear program, right now the amazing thing is that oil is as cheap as it is, and that does give Western capitals a little bit more breathing room.
And there seems to have been, Keith, a huge effort for the last 6 months to get the big producers to ramp up production. Saudi Arabia clearly responded,
right.
even if others haven't. What's the dynamic there? How was Saudi Arabia able to really step up in this case?
No, Saudi Arabia's really stepped up. I mean, when you look at their production over the last 12 months, I mean, they've been at right shy of 10 million barrels a day sustained for about a year now, which is unprecedented for them. I mean, they are literally producing more oil over a more sustained period of time than they've ever done. And that really took the tightness out of the market that we saw in the fourth quarter of last year, into January, into February this year, when the sanctions debate was going on. We had Brent futures up about 120, 125, with fears of a huge oil price spike. We've got oil in the market thanks to the Saudis. We've got oil in the market thanks to increased U.S. production. And right now, thanks to soft demand, on the other hand, we've got a pretty relaxed, pretty well supplied market, and that makes people a little bit more calm heading into the rest of the year.
Keith Johnson, a lot of governments breathing a sigh of relief right now. Thanks for joining us today here on Main Street.